My name is Reese, and I'm 29. I'm a project manager at a tech startup in Seattle, pouring my heart into every deadline, every late night. Last month at our company's fancy gala, I was networking, feeling proud. Then I saw her, Sylvia, the CEO's wife. Her pearl necklace caught the light as she shot me a look that could freeze fire. Why I didn't bow to her first. Now she wants me fired for disrespect. But I've got something she didn't expect. Want to know what happened? Stick around. Where are you watching from? Hit like, subscribe, and let's dive in. The Monday after the gala. I walked into my office with a thermos of coffee and a stack of project notes. My desk was a mess, papers spilling over, but I loved it. It felt like proof I was building something real. I was mid-email typing out a timeline for our next product launch when my phone buzzed. Arthur, my boss, wanted me in his office. Now. My stomach twisted a little. He wasn't the type to summon me without reason. I grabbed my notebook, smoothed my blouse, and headed down the hall. Arthur's office was all glass and sharp edges, a contrast to his soft demeanor. He was leaning back in his chair, fidgeting with a sailboat-shaped paperweight. That thing always caught my eye, a gift from Sylvia, I'd heard. It gleamed under the fluorescent lights like it was mocking me. He didn't look up when I walked in, just gestured to the chair across from him. I sat clutching my notebook, waiting for him to speak. "Reese," he started, his voice low. "We need to talk about the gala." My heart sank. I'd spent the weekend replaying that night, wondering if I'd misread Sylvia's glare. I thought maybe I'd imagined the venom in her eyes. But Arthur's tone told me I hadn't. Sylvia was upset. She said you were disrespectful, that you ignored her on purpose. His words landed like a slap. Disrespectful? I'd been working the room, shaking hands with clients, laughing with my team. I barely remembered Sylvia beyond her cold stare. "I didn't ignore her," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I was networking Arthur. I spoke to her husband first because he approached me about the new software rollout. I didn't know there was a protocol for greeting her." My mind raced back to that moment, Sylvia standing a few feet away. Her lips pursed as I answered her husband's questions. Had she expected me to curtsy? I almost laughed at the thought, but Arthur's frown stopped me. He sighed, rubbing his temple. "I know you're good at your job, Reese. The best, honestly. Your team's numbers are solid and the board loves your work. But Sylvia, she's not letting this go. She called me yesterday, said it's about respect. She wants..." He trailed off, his eyes darting to the sailboat paperweight. I leaned forward, my pulse quickening. "She wants what I asked, though I already knew." Arthur met my gaze, his expression heavy. "She wants you gone. Said if I don't fire you, she'll make things difficult. For me, for the company." My breath caught. Gone? I'd spent 3 years at this startup, clawing my way up from junior analyst to project manager. I'd skipped vacations, worked weekends, mentored new hires like Marcus, who was finally hitting his stride. And now, because I didn't fawn over Sylvia at a party, my career was on the line. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words stuck. My mind flashed to my sister Clara. Growing up, she'd always called me too proud, too stubborn. "You think you're above everyone," she'd say, when I'd fight for my place on the school debate team or push for a promotion. Was this what she meant? Was I being punished for not playing small? I shook the thought away. This wasn't about pride. This was about Sylvia's ego. "Arthur," I said, my voice firmer now, "you know I didn't do anything wrong. I've given everything to this company. You can't seriously be considering this." He looked away, his fingers tracing the edge of the paperweight. "I don't want to, Reese. But Sylvia's got influence. She talks to the board, the investors. I'm in a tough spot." His honesty stung more than I expected. Arthur wasn't a bad guy, but he was spineless when it came to her. I stood, my notebook still unopened in my hands. "So what now? You're just going to let her bully you into firing me?" My tone was sharper than I meant, but I didn't care. Arthur flinched like I'd struck a nerve. "I haven't decided anything," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know what's happening. We'll figure this out." But his eyes told a different story. They were tired, defeated, like he'd already lost the fight. As I walked back to my office, my head was spinning. The hallway felt longer, the hum of the AC louder. I passed Marcus at the copy machine, and he gave me a nervous smile. Did he know? Had the rumors started already? Back at my desk, I sank into my chair, staring at the project timeline on my screen. It blurred as my eyes stung. I wasn't going to cry. Not here. But the weight of it all, the unfairness, was suffocating. I'd built my life around this job, and now it was slipping away because of one woman's grudge. I reached for my coffee, but my hand stopped when I saw a folded note tucked under my keyboard. My name was scrawled on it in sharp, elegant handwriting. I unfolded it, my heart pounding. Resolve this by Friday. Arthur, or I will it read. No signature, but I didn't need one. Sylvia's words stared back at me, cold and final. Friday was 3 days away. 3 days to save everything I'd worked for. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket, my resolve hardening. She thought she could erase me. She was wrong. I sat at my desk, the note from Sylvia burning a hole in my pocket. My coffee was cold now, but I didn't care. I couldn't focus on the project timeline blinking on my screen. All I could think about was her words, resolve this by Friday. 3 days. I shoved the note deeper into my pocket, like hiding it would make it less real. My office usually? My sanctuary felt claustrophobic, the walls closing in with every tick of the clock on my shelf. I needed air. I grabbed my jacket and slipped out, heading for the break room. The hallway was quiet, but I felt eyes on me. Or maybe I was paranoid. As I passed the conference room, I caught a glimpse of Lila, my coworker, hunched over her laptop. She looked up, her brow furrowed, and waved me in. "Reese, you okay?" she asked, her voice low. She pushed a chair out for me, and I sank into it, grateful for her warmth. "Not really," I admitted, keeping my voice steady. Lila was the one person I trusted here. She'd been at the company longer than me, knew all the unspoken rules. I pulled out the note and slid it across the table. Her eyes widened as she read it. "Sylvia left this on Arthur's desk," I said. "She's giving him an ultimatum. Me or her wrath." Lila's jaw tightened and she handed the note back. "This is classic Sylvia," she said. "She's done this before. Remember Tara, the engineer? Sylvia got her demoted for attitude 2 years ago. Nobody fought back." My stomach churned. Tara. I vaguely remembered her, a sharp woman who'd left suddenly. I'd assumed she'd gotten a better offer. "Why does she get away with it?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. Lila leaned back, glancing at the door to make sure we were alone. "Because Arthur lets her. She's got him wrapped around her finger, and the board doesn't care as long as the company's profitable. Sylvia's not just the CEO's wife. She's a power trip with a purse." I rubbed my temples, trying to process it. So what do I do? Just wait for Arthur to cave? Lila's eyes softened, but she didn't sugarcoat it. "You need to be smart, Reese. Document everything. Emails, meetings, this note. If she's coming for you, she won't stop." Her words hit hard, but they also lit a spark. I wasn't going to roll over. Not yet. Back at my desk, I tried to work, but my mind kept drifting. Marcus popped in, clutching a stack of reports. "Reese, can you review these before the client call?" he asked, his voice hesitant. He was 22, eager, and I'd spent months coaching him through his nerves. Now he looked like he was bracing for bad news. "Sure," I said, forcing a smile. "You're doing great, Marcus. Don't worry." He nodded, but his eyes lingered, like he wanted to ask something else. "Is everything okay?" I heard Arthur was upset. My heart sank. So the whispers were starting. "It's fine," I lied, hating how easily the words came. Marcus left, and I buried myself in his reports, circling typos to keep my hands busy. But my thoughts kept circling back to Clara. Her voice echoed in my head, sharp and accusing, "You're too proud." I hadn't talked to her in months, not since our last fight, when she'd called my career obsession selfish. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd been so focused on proving myself that I'd stepped on Sylvia's toes without realizing it. But no, this wasn't my fault. Sylvia was twisting a nothing moment into a war. I opened my email half hoping for a distraction and found a message from Arthur. My pulse spiked as I clicked it. Reese, let's meet tomorrow to discuss next steps. I'm working on a solution. A solution. The word felt ominous, like a door slamming shut. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. What did that mean? Was he stalling, or had Sylvia already won? I wanted to march back to his office, demand answers, but I knew it wouldn't help. Not now. Instead, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Clara's number. My thumb hovered over the call button. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy, that this wasn't fair. But what if she just lectured me again? I locked my phone and shoved it in my drawer. I couldn't deal with her judgment on top of everything else. Not tonight. By the time I left the office, the sky was gray, a light drizzle coating my jacket. I walked to my car, the note still in my pocket, Sylvia's words looping in my mind. 3 days. I'd always prided myself on fixing problems, on finding a way through. But this felt different, like a storm I couldn't outrun. As I started my car, my eyes caught the company logo on a billboard across the street. It used to make me proud. Now it just made me angry. Sylvia thought she could break me. I wasn't going to let her. The next morning, I woke up with a headache, the kind that feels like a bruise behind your eyes. My apartment was quiet, the only sound the drip of my coffee maker. I hadn't slept much, Sylvia's note, and Arthur's vague email looping in my head. I pulled on a blazer and headed to the office, determined to act normal. But my nerves were raw, like I was walking into a trap. The drizzle from last night had turned into a steady rain, matching my mood. At work, the air felt different. My team's usual chatter was muted, replaced by quick glances and forced smiles. I caught Marcus hovering near my office door, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "Reese, you got a sec?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, waving him in. He shut the door behind him, which wasn't like him. "People are talking," he said, shifting his weight. "They say you're in trouble. With Sylvia. Is it true?" My chest tightened. I wanted to brush it off, keep him focused on work, but his wide eyes stopped me. Marcus looked up to me, trusted me to have it together. "It's just a misunderstanding," I said, hating how hollow it sounded. "I'm handling it." "Don't worry. Okay, let's get those client mock-ups ready." He nodded, but the doubt in his face lingered as he left. I sank into my chair, my hands trembling. The rumors were spreading faster than I'd feared. I tried to focus on emails, but every ping made me flinch, expecting another cryptic message from Arthur. Instead, I found the company newsletter in my inbox. Sylvia's face plastered on the front. She was beaming at some charity gala. Her arm looped through her husband's. The caption praised her tireless dedication to the community. I scoffed, slamming my laptop shut. Dedication. She was dedicated to crushing anyone who didn't kiss her ring. Around noon, I headed to the break room for a refill. That's when I saw her. Sylvia, in a tailored coat, striding through the office like she owned it. She was laughing with a senior manager, her voice carrying over the hum of printers. My grip tightened on my mug. She hadn't been in the office this often in months, and now here she was, parading around. Our eyes met for a split second, and her smile didn't falter, but it turned sharp like a blade. Then she turned away, praising someone's presentation, acting like I didn't exist. I stood frozen, coffee forgotten, as heat crept up my neck. She was doing this on purpose, making a show of her power while I was fighting to keep my job. Back at my desk, I found a new email from Arthur. My heart sank as I opened it. "Reese, I'm reassigning the Q4 project to Lauren. It's a temporary restructure. Let's discuss soon." Temporary. The Q4 project was my baby. The one I'd pitched to the board myself. Lauren was competent, but she hadn't spent months refining the strategy like I had. This wasn't a restructure, it was a gut punch. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. Arthur was pulling me apart piece by piece, and Sylvia was the one holding the strings. I wanted to storm into his office, demand he explain himself, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. Instead, I grabbed my phone and dialed Clara. I hadn't called her last night, too afraid of her judgment, but now I needed someone, anyone, to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. She picked up on the third ring. Reese. What's up? Her voice was casual, like we hadn't gone months without talking. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice even. Clara, I'm in trouble at work. The CEO's wife is trying to get me fired over nothing. Arthur's already taking my projects away. I don't know what to do. There was a pause too long, and then she sighed. Reese, maybe you're overreacting. You've always been so intense about your job. Did you apologize to her? Sometimes you come off proud. Her words hit like a slap. Proud. There it was again, that same accusation she'd thrown at me since we were kids. Apologize, I snapped. Clara, I didn't do anything wrong. She's targeting me because I didn't grovel at a party. Another pause. I'm just saying she said maybe if you played nice, this wouldn't be happening. I hung up before I said something I'd regret, my hands shaking. Clara was supposed to be my sister, my anchor, but she was siding with Sylvia's twisted logic. Back in the office, the day dragged on, each hour heavier than the last. My team avoided me, their whispers stopping whenever I walked by. Marcus kept his head down, focusing on his laptop, but I could tell he was rattled. The Q4 project files were gone from my shared drive, already transferred to Lauren. It was like I was being erased one piece at a time. Sylvia's presence lingered even after she left, her perfume hanging in the air like a taunt. I was drowning, and no one was throwing me a line. By late afternoon, the office felt like a pressure cooker, every glance and whisper tightening the screws. I tried to focus on a budget report, but the numbers swam on my screen, meaningless. My mug sat untouched, a faint coffee ring staining my desk. I kept replaying Clara's words, her casual dismissal cutting deeper than Sylvia's schemes. My own sister thought I deserved this, that I'd brought it on myself. The betrayal stung worse than I expected, like a splinter I couldn't dig out. I was about to shut down my computer when Lila slipped into my office, her face grim. She didn't sit, just leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Reese, I did some digging, she said, her voice hushed. Sylvia's been at this for years. She's targeted at least 3 other women here, all young, all rising fast. They either left or got pushed out. I found an old HR complaint buried. It's her pattern. My throat tightened. A pattern. I wasn't just a target. I was part of her game. Why hasn't anyone stopped her? I asked, my voice cracking. Lila's eyes darkened. Because she's careful. She never leaves a paper trail, and Arthur covers for her. That complaint. It was dismissed for lack of evidence. The woman who filed it quit a week later. I leaned back, my chair creaking under me. The weight of it was crushing, knowing I was up against someone who'd done this before and won. Lila hesitated, then added, "Be careful, Reese. She's not just petty. She's vicious." After Lila left, I sat frozen, staring at the clock. 5 minutes until my team's status meeting. I'd always loved these, the buzz of ideas, the way Marcus's face lit up when he nailed a task. But today I dreaded walking in. I forced myself to stand, smoothing my skirt, and headed to the conference room. The team was already there, laptops open, but the energy was off. No one met my eyes except Marcus, who gave a small, nervous nod. I started the meeting, running through updates, but my voice felt hollow, like I was reading someone else's script. Halfway through, Lauren piped up, her tone clipped. "Reese, since I'm taking over Q4, should I loop you out of the client emails?" The room went silent. I felt every pair of eyes on me, waiting. My face burned. She'd said it so casually, but it was a knife twisting. "For now, yeah," I managed, keeping my voice even. "I'll stay on the strategy calls." Lauren nodded, but her smirk said she knew I was slipping. As the meeting dragged on, I noticed the others pulling back. No one asked for my input, not even on the projects I'd built from scratch. Marcus tried to chime in once, defending my timeline for a deliverable, but Lauren cut him off, saying she'd handle it. My hands clenched under the table nails, digging into my palms. This was my team, my people, and they were turning away either out of fear or because they sensed I was done. After the meeting, I stayed behind, pretending to organize my notes. The truth was, I couldn't face the hallway, the pitying looks, or worse, the indifference. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through old texts from my mom. She'd died 4 years ago, but her words still grounded me. "Keep your head up, Reese. You're tougher than they know." I wanted to believe her, but right now I felt small, like the ground was crumbling under me. Back at my desk, I found a sticky note on my monitor. "Check the break room," it read in Lila's scrawl. My heart raced as I hurried there, expecting another clue about Sylvia. Instead, I overheard two coworkers by the coffee machine, their voices low but clear. "Reese is done," one said. "Sylvia's got Arthur by the throat. Lauren's already angling for her office." The other laughed. She should have known better than to cross the queen bee. My blood ran cold. I backed away, my shoes silent on the tile, and slipped back to my office, my pulse hammering. I shut my door and leaned against it, my breath shallow. The walls felt like they were closing in the hum of the office, a dull roar in my ears. I'd always thought I could handle anything, outwork any problem. But this was different. Sylvia wasn't just coming for my job. She was dismantling my place here, my reputation, my team's trust. And Clara's voice kept echoing, telling me I'd been too proud, too stubborn. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd been fighting a losing battle all along. As I sat down, my eyes caught a framed certificate on my wall, an award for leading last year's product launch. It used to make me smile, a reminder of what I'd earned. Now it felt like a cruel joke, proof of everything I was about to lose. I heard Sylvia's laugh from earlier that day, sharp and triumphant, ringing in my head. She was winning, and I was running out of time. Rain battered the windows of Arthur's office as I walked in that afternoon, my shoes squeaking on the polished floor. The air was thick, like the storm outside had seeped into the room. Arthur sat behind his desk, his tie loosened, looking older than I'd ever seen him. My hands were clammy, but I kept them steady, clutching a folder I'd prepared last night. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading all week. I could feel Sylvia's shadow looming, even though she wasn't here. Yet. "Reese, sit," Arthur said, his voice heavy. He didn't meet my eyes, just stared at a stack of papers on his desk. I sat the leather chair cold against my legs and waited. The silence stretched, broken only by the rain's relentless drumming. Finally, he spoke. "I've thought about this a lot. You're talented, Reese. But Sylvia's made it clear she won't let this go. I'm sorry, but I have to let you go." The words hit like a freight train. My breath caught, and for a second I couldn't move. Let you go. I'd known this was coming, braced for it, but hearing it out loud was different. It was real. My throat burned and my mind raced, flashing to every late night I'd spent in this building, every idea I'd poured into this company. All of it erased because Sylvia couldn't handle me existing without her permission. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Arthur, before you continue, check your email." My words came out steadier than I felt. His brow furrowed, but he reached for his laptop, the screen's glow casting shadows on his face. I watched his fingers hesitate over the keys, like he sensed something was coming. My heart pounded, but I kept my expression neutral, even as my insides churned. This was my one shot. The folder in my lap felt heavy, filled with printouts I'd spent hours compiling. Last night, after Lila's warning about Sylvia's pattern, I'd stayed up until dawn piecing together evidence. It started with a tip from Jocelyn, an HR coordinator I barely knew. She'd slipped me a USB drive yesterday, her hands trembling as she whispered, "This could get me fired, but you deserve to know." On that drive were emails, dozens of them, from Sylvia to board members pushing for my termination. Not just mine either. She'd targeted others before me, women like Tara, twisting minor slights into career-ending offenses. Arthur clicked open his inbox, and I leaned forward slightly, my pulse hammering. "Look for the one from me sent an hour ago," I said. He found it, clicked, and started reading. His eyes widened, his jaw tightening as he scrolled. The emails I'd forwarded were damning Sylvia, demanding my firing, calling me arrogant, and a liability, pressuring board members to back her. One even hinted at her threatening to pull her husband's influence if they didn't comply. I'd included Jocelyn's notes, anonymized, detailing how Sylvia had buried past complaints. "Reese, where did you get this?" Arthur's voice was low, almost a whisper. He looked up, his face pale, like he'd seen something he couldn't unsee. I took a deep breath, my hands gripping the folder. From someone who's tired of Sylvia running this company like her personal playground, I said. Those emails aren't just about me. She's been doing this for years, Arthur. You know it. You've let her. He flinched, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. I pressed on, my voice steady but sharp. She's not just coming for me. She's hurt others, and you've looked the other way. Tara, the engineer. She didn't quit because she wanted to. Sylvia forced her out, and you signed off on it. My words hung in the air, heavy and accusing. I hated how they sounded, like I was betraying him, but I was done playing nice. This wasn't just about my job anymore. It was about truth. Arthur opened his mouth, but before he could speak, the door swung open. Sylvia stormed in, her heels clicking like gunfire. Her coat was damp from the rain, her hair slightly mussed, but her eyes were blazing. Arthur, why is she still here? She snapped, not even glancing at me. Her voice was ice, each word dripping with contempt. I told you to handle this. Now. My stomach lurched, but I didn't move. Arthur froze, his eyes darting between us. Sylvia's presence filled the room, suffocating, like she could bend reality to her will. I tightened my grip on the folder, my heart racing. She hadn't seen the email yet. She didn't know what I'd done. But the way her gaze finally landed on me, sharp and predatory, told me she sensed something was wrong. The air crackled, and I knew this was about to explode. Sylvia's eyes narrowed as she stepped closer, her perfume sharp and cloying, cutting through the damp air. What's going on here? She demanded, her voice rising, each word a blade aimed at Arthur. He shifted in his chair, his laptop still open, the screen glowing with the emails I'd sent. I stayed silent, my knuckles white around the folder, every muscle tensed. The rain outside roared a dull thunder, underscoring the storm brewing in this room. Sylvia's gaze flicked to me, and I saw it, a flicker of unease. Arthur, answer me, she snapped, planting her hands on his desk. Her gold bracelet glinted under the lights, a stark contrast to the chaos she was unleashing. Arthur cleared his throat, his voice shaky. Reese sent me something. Emails. About you. Sylvia's head whipped toward me, her lips parting in disbelief. For a moment I thought she'd lunge, but she froze, her face a mask of barely contained fury. Emails, she said, her tone mocking but strained. What, some pathetic attempt to save her job? Arthur, you can't possibly believe this nonsense. She laughed, a brittle sound that didn't reach her eyes. But I saw her hands tremble slightly, betraying her. She knew something was off, even if she didn't know the full scope yet. My chest ached with the weight of what was coming, but I didn't flinch. I couldn't not now. Arthur turned the laptop toward her, his movements slow, like he was handling something fragile. Sylvia just read them, he said, his voice barely audible. She leaned over, scanning the screen, and I watched her expression shift. Her smirk faded, replaced by a tightening around her mouth, her eyes darting over the words. The emails laid her bare, her demands to fire me, her pressure on the board, her buried complaints against others. And then there was the worst one, the one I'd almost missed. She'd pushed Arthur to ignore a major client's safety concerns about our software, all to rush a launch for her husband's bonus. Sylvia straightened her face, pale but defiant. This is fabricated, she hissed, turning to me. You think you can smear me with this? I've given years to this company, to my husband's vision. You're nothing, Reese. A nobody who thought she could play in my world. Her words cut deep, each one designed to shrink me, to make me feel small. I wanted to scream, to throw the folder at her, but I stayed still, my breath shallow. She wasn't just attacking me. She was rewriting reality, and Arthur was letting her. Sylvia, stop? Arthur said, his voice firmer now, but she ignored him, stepping toward me. Her heels clicked, deliberate, like a predator closing in. You think you're clever, don't you? She said, her voice low and venomous. Digging up dirt, trying to turn my husband against me. But you're out of your depth. Everyone here knows you're done. Your team, your precious projects, they're already moving on without you. She leaned closer, her breath hot on my face. You're a footnote, Reese. And I'll make sure you stay that way. My vision blurred, not from tears, but from rage, from the sheer unfairness of it all. My team. Marcus's nervous nod this morning, Lauren's smirk, the whispers in the break room, they flashed through my mind, each one a wound. Sylvia knew exactly where to strike, and it worked. I felt exposed, like she'd ripped open every doubt I'd buried. My hands shook the folder, slipping slightly in my grip. I wanted to fight back, to tell her she was wrong, but my voice wouldn't come. Not yet. Arthur stood his chair, scraping against the floor. "Sylvia, enough," he said, his tone sharp now. But she didn't stop. She turned to him, her eyes blazing. "No, Arthur. You let this go too far. You should have fired her days ago. Now she's dragging us all down with her lies." She gestured at the laptop, her bracelet catching the light again, a cruel reminder of her untouchable status. "You think the board will care about some hacked emails? They trust me. They need me." I couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, the walls pressing in, Sylvia's words suffocating me. She was so sure of herself, so certain she'd win. And Arthur, standing there, looked torn, his eyes flicking between us. I saw it in his face, the doubt, the fear of what Sylvia could do to him, to the company. My heart sank. Was he going to fold? After everything I'd shown him, was he still going to let her walk all over me? Sylvia turned back to me, her smile cold and triumphant. "Pack your things, Reese," she said, her voice dripping with finality. "You're finished here." The words echoed, each one a hammer blow, shattering what little hope I'd clung to. My eyes burned, my chest tight, and for the first time I felt truly powerless. Everything I'd built, everything I was, it was slipping away, and I couldn't stop it. Sylvia's words hung in the air, heavy and final, but something in me shifted. My hands stopped shaking, the folder steady in my grip. I wasn't finished. Not yet. I left Arthur's office, rain still pounding outside, and headed straight for my car. The weight of her venom clung to me, but it was fuel now, not poison. I drove to a coffee shop a few blocks away, the kind with mismatched chairs and the smell of burnt espresso. I needed space to think, to plan. Inside, I found a corner table, the hum of conversation grounding me. My phone buzzed, Lila checking in. I texted back asking her to meet me. While I waited, I pulled out a small notebook, its edges worn from years of jotting ideas. I started writing names: Jocelyn, Lila, Marcus. People I trusted, people who'd seen Sylvia's games. If I was going down, I wasn't going alone. I scribbled questions too. What did the board know? Could Jocelyn get more evidence? My pen moved faster, each word a step away from despair. Lila arrived, her coat damp, and slid into the seat across from me. "You look like you're plotting a revolution," she said, half smiling. I pushed the notebook toward her. "Maybe I am," I said, my voice low but firm. "Sylvia thinks she's untouchable. I'm going to prove her wrong." Lila's eyes lit up as she scanned my notes. "You're serious," she said. "What's the plan?" I leaned in the table, creaking under my elbows. "We file a formal complaint with the board. Not just about me, but her whole pattern. Jocelyn's got more files. We need to organize it fast." Lila nodded, pulling out her phone. "I'm in. I can talk to some of the older staff. A few remember Tara's case. They might sign on if we're careful." Her enthusiasm sparked something in me, a flicker of hope I hadn't felt in days. But then she hesitated, her thumb hovering over her screen. "Reese, this could backfire. Sylvia's got friends on the board. You sure you want to do this?" I swallowed, the risk sinking in. But then I thought of Sylvia's smirk, her bracelet glinting as she tore me apart. "I'm sure," I said. "I'm done hiding." We spent the next hour mapping it out. Jocelyn would meet us tomorrow to share more HR records. Lila would draft a petition, discreetly gathering signatures from staff Sylvia had wronged. I'd write the complaint, laying out every detail: the emails, the threats, the buried complaints. My notebook filled up pages, cramped with timelines and bullet points. It wasn't just about saving my job anymore. It was about stopping her, for Tara, for everyone she'd crushed. As Lila left to make calls, I stayed sipping lukewarm coffee. My phone lit up with a new message, this time from Marcus. "Reese, I heard what happened in Arthur's office. I want to help. Whatever you need." I stared at the words, my chest tightening. Marcus, barely out of college, was putting himself on the line for me. I typed back, "Thank you. Meet me tomorrow. We've got work to do." His reply came fast. "Count me in." I smiled, a real one, for the first time in days. Alone again, I flipped to a new page in my notebook. I started writing a letter to the board, my words sharp and clear. Sylvia's actions aren't just personal. They're systemic, undermining this company's values and its people. My pen scratched the paper, each sentence a release, like I was clawing my way back to myself. I thought of my mom, her voice steady in my memory. "You're tougher than they know." She was right. I was. The coffee shop was emptying out, the barista wiping down counters. I closed my notebook, my resolve hardening. Sylvia had pushed me to the edge, but I wasn't falling. I was building something, a case, a stand, a truth she couldn't bury. My hands were steady now, my mind clear. This wasn't over. I was just getting started. The next morning I woke before my alarm, the sky outside my apartment still dark. My notebook lay open on the kitchen counter, its pages a map of the fight ahead. I traced my finger over the names I'd written, each one a tether pulling me forward. Jocelyn, Lila, Marcus. I wasn't alone anymore. I brewed coffee, the gurgle of the machine steadying my nerves, and dressed in a navy blazer that made me feel sharp, like I could face anything. Today we'd start building the case. At the office, I kept my head down, avoiding the usual morning chatter. My desk was cluttered, but I cleared a space for my laptop and the folder from yesterday. I opened a new document, the cursor blinking, and started typing the complaint. My fingers flew, words pouring out, Sylvia's emails. Her demands to fire me, her history of targeting others. I included Tara's story pieced together from Jocelyn's files. Her career derailed by a single lunch where she'd overshadowed Sylvia. Each sentence felt like a brick stacking up against her. Mid-morning, Jocelyn met me in a quiet corner of the parking lot. Her scarf pulled tight against the chill. She handed me a slim envelope, her eyes darting around. "More records," she whispered. "Performance reviews Sylvia pressured HR to alter. Not just Tara's. 2 others." I took the envelope, my heart racing. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. She looked down, then met my gaze. "Because I've seen her ruin too many people. Someone has to stop her." Her words hit me, a quiet courage I hadn't expected. I nodded, slipping the envelope into my bag. "Thank you, Jocelyn." Back inside, I met Lila in the supply closet, the only place we could talk without being overheard. She'd drafted the petition, a single page listing Sylvia's overreaches, careful not to name names yet. "I've got 3 signatures already," she said, her voice low. "People are scared, but they're angry too. Keep pushing, Reese." I scanned the page, my chest swelling. These weren't just names. They were people who'd felt Sylvia's boot on their necks. I added a note to my complaint referencing the petition's support, my resolve growing with every word. By lunch, Marcus found me in my office, his usual hesitance gone. "I want to testify," he said, standing tall. "I saw Sylvia chew out a designer last year for questioning her input on a campaign. It wasn't right." His voice was steady, his eyes bright with conviction. I smiled, a real warmth spreading through me. "You're sure?" I asked. He nodded. "You've always had my back, Reese. Now I've got yours." I blinked back, a sting in my eyes, handing him a pen to add his statement to our growing file. His trust was a lifeline pulling me out of the dark. That afternoon, I confronted Arthur. His office was dim, the rain finally easing, leaving streaks on the glass. He looked exhausted. His shirt wrinkled like he hadn't slept. "Reese, I'm trying to fix this," he said before I could speak, his voice pleading. I cut him off, my tone firm but calm. "You've been trying to fix it by letting Sylvia run the show. That stops now. I'm filing a complaint with the board. You can either help me or deal with the fallout when they see what she's done." I slid a summary of the complaint across his desk, watching his face pale. He didn't speak, just nodded, and I walked out, my pulse steady. Back at my desk, I got a call from Clara. I almost let it go to voicemail, her last words still raw, but something made me answer. "Reese." "I'm sorry," she said, her voice soft. I was wrong. You don't deserve this. Can I help? I paused, my throat tight. For years, Clara's criticism had been a weight, but now she was reaching out. Just be there, I said finally. That's enough. She promised to visit soon, and when I hung up, I felt lighter, like a knot in my chest had loosened. As the day ended, I sat alone in my office, the building quiet. My complaint was nearly done, a stack of evidence beside it. Jocelyn's records, Lila's petition, Marcus's statement. I ran my fingers over the notebook, its worn cover soft under my touch. I'd been broken in that meeting with Sylvia, felt like nothing. But now I was building something bigger than her, something true. I closed my laptop, stood, and slipped the notebook into my bag. My reflection caught in the window eyes, sharp, unflinching. I was ready. The boardroom was colder than I expected, the long mahogany table reflecting the gray light filtering through tall windows. I stood at one end, my hands resting on a stack of documents, the complaint I'd spent days crafting. The board members sat in high-backed chairs, their faces unreadable, pens poised over notepads. Eleanor, the chairwoman, adjusted her glasses and nodded for me to begin. My throat was dry, but I straightened my voice steady as I started. I'm here to address a pattern of misconduct that's been ignored too long. I laid out the case page by page. Sylvia's emails, her demands to fire me, her history of targeting others. I cited Jocelyn's records, the petition Lila had circulated, Marcus's testimony. My words were measured, but each one carried the weight of every sleepless night, every whispered rumor. The board listened, their silence, heavy, broken only by the faint scratch of Eleanor's pen. I glanced at Arthur, seated to my right, his hands clasped tightly, eyes fixed on the table. When I finished, Eleanor leaned forward, her voice calm but firm. These are serious allegations, Reese. You're accusing the CEO's wife of systemic interference. Do you understand the implications? I nodded, my stomach twisting. I do. But I'm not the only one affected. This isn't just about me. I slid copies of the evidence across the table, watching as they flipped through the pages, their expressions shifting from skepticism to unease. One member, a gray-haired man named Harold, frowned deeply, circling something in the margins. Arthur spoke up, his voice strained. I wasn't aware of the full extent of this. Sylvia, she's passionate about the company. I thought she was just protective. His words faltered, and I bit back a retort. Protective, she'd nearly destroyed me. But I stayed silent, letting the evidence speak. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Arthur, you're the CEO. If these emails are authentic, you've allowed this to go unchecked. That's a problem. He flinched, his knuckles whitening, and I felt a pang of pity, quickly smothered by the memory of his hesitation. The room grew quieter, the tension thick enough to choke on. I stood tall, but my legs felt unsteady, like the floor might give way. I'd done it, laid everything bare, but the board's faces gave nothing away. Were they shocked, angry? Or did they think I was overreaching, a disgruntled employee lashing out? My mind raced, second-guessing every word I'd said, every page I'd handed over. Had I been clear enough? Had I missed something? Eleanor broke the silence, her tone clipped. We'll need time to verify this. Reese, you'll be contacted for follow-up. Arthur, you'll provide full access to your correspondence. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. And Sylvia will be summoned to respond. My heart stuttered. Sylvia here facing this. I should have felt triumphant, but all I felt was dread. She'd fight back, twist everything, and I wasn't sure I could withstand another round. As the meeting ended, the board filed out their murmurs, low and guarded. Arthur lingered, approaching me as I gathered my papers. Reese, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know it was this bad. I'm sorry. His eyes were tired, almost pleading. I couldn't muster sympathy. You should have known, I said quietly, zipping my bag. He nodded, his shoulders slumping, and walked away, leaving me alone in the empty room. I stepped into the hallway, the fluorescent lights harsh after the boardroom's dim glow. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Lila. How'd it go? I didn't reply, not yet. My head was spinning, the weight of what I'd done settling in. I'd thrown a grenade into Sylvia's world, but the fallout was just beginning. I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes, the cool plaster grounding me. The board's silence. Arthur's apology. The promise of Sylvia's response. It all hung over me, heavy and unresolved, like a storm cloud waiting to break. I left the office that evening, my bag heavy with papers, the weight of the boardroom still pressing on my shoulders. The parking lot was nearly empty, the asphalt slick from earlier rain. My car's headlights cut through the dusk as I drove home, the city lights blurring past. I kept replaying Eleanor's words, her promise to summon Sylvia. It should have felt like a victory, but it didn't. It felt like standing on a cliff, waiting for the ground to crumble. At my apartment, I dropped my bag on the couch and kicked off my shoes. The place was a mess, dishes piled in the sink, but I didn't care. I poured a glass of water, the tap's hiss, the only sound. My phone stayed silent, no updates from Lila or Marcus. I'd expected questions, maybe relief, but their quiet felt louder, like they were holding their breath too. I sank onto the couch, staring at the cracked coffee mug on the table, a relic from my mom. Its chipped rim caught the lamplight, and I traced it with my finger, wishing she were here to tell me I'd done enough. The next day, the office was different. Not louder, not busier, just heavier. I walked to my desk, noticing how conversations paused when I passed. Lauren, now leading my old project, gave me a curt nod, her eyes sliding away. Marcus was at his desk, typing furiously, but he didn't look up, his shoulders hunched like he was shielding himself. I wanted to ask if he was okay, but something stopped me. The air felt fragile, like one wrong word could shatter it. By noon, word spread that Sylvia had been barred from the premises pending the board's review. I overheard it in the break room, two accountants murmuring over their sandwiches. "She's furious," one said, glancing at me before looking away. "Called the chairman last night, demanding a meeting." I froze my hand on the fridge door. Furious. Of course she was. Sylvia didn't lose gracefully. I grabbed a soda and left my stomach nodding at the thought of her next move. Back at my desk, I found an email from Eleanor. Short, formal. "Your position is secure for now. We're reviewing all materials. Secure for now." The words should have lifted me, but they didn't. They felt like a stay of execution, not a win. I closed the email and opened my project files, trying to focus, but my mind kept drifting to Sylvia's face in Arthur's office, her certainty that I was nothing. Part of me still feared she was right. Clara called that afternoon. I answered, expecting her usual brisk tone, but her voice was soft, almost hesitant. "Reese, I'm proud of you," she said. "I know I wasn't there before, but you're doing something big." I gripped the phone, my eyes stinging. I wanted to tell her how scared I was, how the board's silence felt like a noose, but I just said, "Thanks, Clara." We talked for a while about nothing important, and when I hung up, I felt a flicker of warmth like a candle in a dark room. But the warmth didn't last. By the end of the week, the office was a maze of sideways glances and hushed tones. My team worked quietly, their updates brief, their eyes avoiding mine. I caught Marcus lingering after a meeting, his hands fidgeting. "Reese," he said, barely audible, "some people are saying you went too far, that you're stirring up trouble." His words hit like a slap, not because they were cruel, but because they were honest. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Let them talk," I said, but my voice was thin, brittle. That night I sat on my balcony, the city humming below. The cracked mug was in my hands, its weight familiar grounding. I'd fought for my place, exposed Sylvia's lies, but the cost was everywhere, in Marcus's doubt, the team's distance, the board's cold formality. I'd wanted justice, but this didn't feel just. It felt lonely, like I'd traded one cage for another. I set the mug down, its chip glinting in the moonlight, and let the quiet swallow me whole. A month had passed since the board meeting, and the office was starting to feel like mine again. I woke early that Saturday, the light soft through my bedroom window, and decided to walk to a park nearby. My sneakers crunched on the gravel path, the air crisp with the first hint of fall. Kids laughed on a playground in the distance, their voices carrying over the rustle of leaves. I found a bench under an oak tree, its branches heavy with green, and sat pulling my jacket tighter. I hadn't heard from the board since their last email, a brief note saying the review was ongoing. Sylvia was still barred from the office, and Arthur had been quieter, his emails short and professional. The whispers about me had faded, replaced by the hum of deadlines and coffee runs. But I wasn't the same. The fight had changed me, carved something new into my bones. I wasn't sure what it was yet, just that it felt heavier, wiser. I pulled a small journal from my pocket, its leather cover smooth under my fingers. I'd started writing again, not plans or complaints, but thoughts, fragments of who I was becoming. Today I wrote about the park, the way the light dappled the grass, the way it reminded me of summers with my mom. She'd bring me to places like this, spread a blanket, and tell me stories about her childhood. "You've got her fire," she'd say, ruffling my hair. I smiled at the memory, my pen pausing. I missed her, and for the first time the ache felt soft, not sharp. Back at work on Monday, I called a team meeting. The conference room smelled of whiteboard markers and fresh paper. My team filed in laptops under their arms, their faces more open than they'd been in weeks. Marcus sat near the front, his notebook already open, a new confidence in his posture. I stood at the head of the table, my hands loose at my sides, and started. "We've been through a lot," I said, my voice steady. "But we're still here, and we've got work to do. Let's talk about what's next." I laid out new goals, a project I'd been sketching out in my journal, a software update focused on user accessibility. The idea had come to me in the park, inspired by a kid in a wheelchair I'd seen struggling with a curb. My team leaned in, their questions sharp, their ideas sparking. Marcus suggested a feature for voice navigation, his voice clear, no trace of the nerves he'd had months ago. I nodded, jotting it down, a warmth spreading in my chest. This was why I'd fought for moments like this for them. After the meeting, Marcus lingered, helping me stack chairs. "Reese," he said, his tone careful. "I'm sorry about what I said before about people talking. I should have had your back." I looked at him, his eyes earnest, and smiled. "You're here now," I said. "That's what matters." He grinned, a weight lifting between us, and headed out. I stood alone in the room, the hum of the AC soft, and felt something settle inside me like a stone finding its place in a riverbed. That evening, I walked home, the streets alive with the buzz of early fall. My apartment building loomed ahead, its brick warm in the fading light. I climbed the stairs, my steps lighter than they'd been in months. Inside, I watered a sunflower I'd planted in a pot by the window, its yellow petals bright against the glass. It had sprouted despite my neglect, stubborn and alive. I touched its leaves, my fingers gentle, and felt a quiet strength, not loud or fierce, but steady, like the park's oak rooted deep. That night, I invited Lila over for dinner, something I hadn't done in months. My kitchen was small, the counters cluttered with spices and a cutting board, but it felt alive as we chopped vegetables, the knife's rhythm steady. Lila stirred a pot of soup, her laugh filling the room when I fumbled with a garlic clove. "You're hopeless," she teased, but her eyes were warm, like we'd slipped back to easier days. We talked about work, the new project, but also quieter things, her weekend hikes, my half-read novels piling up on the nightstand. As we ate, the soup's warmth spreading through me, I felt a shift. Lila wasn't just my ally in the fight. She was my friend, someone who'd seen me at my lowest and stayed. I told her about the park, the journal, how I was starting to see myself differently. "You sound lighter," she said, setting her spoon down. I nodded, the word fitting. Lighter not because the scars were gone, but because I was learning to carry them. Later, I walked her to the door, the hallway's fluorescent buzz soft. "Thanks for this," I said, my voice low. She hugged me quick but firm, and left her footsteps fading down the stairs. I stood there, the quiet settling, and realized I wasn't afraid of it anymore. The silence used to feel like a void, a place where doubts crept in. Now it was just space, room to breathe. The next day, I took a break from work and drove to a small bookstore I used to visit with my mom. Its shelves were crammed, the air thick with the smell of old paper. I wandered the aisles, my fingers grazing spines, and found a poetry collection, its cover faded blue. I bought it, tucking it under my arm as I stepped back into the crisp afternoon. In my car, I flipped it open, reading a line about roots growing through cracked stone. It stayed with me like a whisper from somewhere deep. Back home, I called Clara. She was coming to visit soon, and we planned a weekend, nothing fancy, just coffee and walks. Her voice was different now, softer, like she was meeting me halfway. We laughed about a childhood prank, sneaking cookies from the jar, and for a moment I was a kid again, unburdened. When we hung up, I sat on my couch, the poetry book in my lap, and wrote a single word in my journal: enough. Not a surrender, but a choice. I'd fought, I'd hurt, and now I was choosing to be enough just as I was. At work, I started sketching a mentorship program with Lila, something to guide new hires, especially women, through the unspoken traps of office politics. We met in the break room, papers spread out, our voices low but excited. The idea felt like planting something like the sunflower in my window, small but stubborn. I caught my reflection in the glass door, my eyes clear, my shoulders straight. I wasn't the woman who'd walked into Arthur's office months ago, trembling and small. I was someone new, not fearless, but unafraid to keep going. That evening, I stood by my window, the city's lights flickering below. The sunflower's petals glowed in the dusk, delicate but fierce. I didn't need to win every battle or prove every point. I just needed to show up day after day for myself, for my team, for the parts of me I was still discovering. I closed my journal, the word enough written again, and let the quiet wrap around me, soft as a blanket, steady as a heartbeat. 6 months later, my office feels like a new place. The clutter's gone, replaced by neat stacks of files and a small plant in a clay pot, its leaves curling toward the window. I'm 30 now, and the days move slower, more deliberate. I start each morning with a walk through my neighborhood, the Seattle mist cool on my face, the sound of delivery trucks a quiet hum. I stop at a corner bakery, grabbing a scone, letting the routine anchor me. It's not grand, but it's mine. Work has settled into a rhythm. The board finished their review, and Sylvia's influence is gone, her name barely mentioned. Arthur stepped up, implementing new rules to keep spouses out of company decisions. I lead my team with a steadier hand, guiding them through launches and late-night revisions. Marcus has grown, his presentations sharp, his confidence a quiet echo of my own. I catch him joking with the new hires, and it makes me smile, a warmth that lingers. I've started running again, something I hadn't done since college. The park near my apartment has a loop, a mile of packed dirt under pines. My sneakers pound the ground, my breath steady, and I feel my body waking up stronger than it's been in years. I don't run to escape anymore. I run to feel alive, to remind myself I'm here, still moving forward. The other day, I hit a new personal best, and I laughed out loud, startling a jogger nearby. It felt good, that laugh, like a piece of me I'd forgotten. Clara came to visit last month. We spent a weekend wandering the city, sipping coffee in cramped cafes, browsing thrift stores for old records. She's different now, less quick to judge, and I'm different too, less guarded. We talked about our childhood, the fights, the silences, and for the first time I didn't flinch at the memories. We bought a vinyl of jazz standards, and back at my place, we played at the saxophone, filling the room as we cooked pasta, the kitchen bright with our laughter. I keep a small box on my desk, wooden with a brass latch. Inside are notes from my team, scribbled thank yous for deadlines, met ideas shared. There's one from Marcus, written after a tough project: "You make us better." I don't open the box often, but when I do, it's a reminder of what I've built, not just for the company, but for the people around me. It's not about glory. It's about showing up day after day, even when it's hard. On weekends, I volunteer at a community center, teaching basic coding to teens. Their eyes light up when they make a line of code work, and I see myself in them, that hunger to create something from nothing. I don't talk about my past, the fight with Sylvia, but it's there, woven into the patience I bring, the way I listen when they stumble. It's not about fixing them. It's about giving them space to grow the way I wish someone had for me. This morning I stood in my office, the plant's leaves catching the dawn. I watered it, the soil dark and rich, and felt a quiet pride. I'm not the woman who walked into that boardroom trembling with evidence. I'm not the one who shrank under Sylvia's glare. I'm Reese, still learning, still healing, but whole in a way I wasn't before. I set the watering can down the room still and took a slow breath, the kind that feels like coming home. Last week I took a day off and drove out to a lake an hour from the city. The water was still reflecting the heavy clouds above, and I sat on a wooden dock, my legs dangling over the edge. I brought a thermos of tea, its steam curling in the cool air, and a notebook not for work but for me. I wrote about the fight with Sylvia, not the details, but what it taught me. I wasn't writing to relive it. I was writing to let it go. I thought about my mom, how she'd always said strength wasn't about being loud or winning every fight. It was about knowing when to stand and when to walk away. I'd stood up to Sylvia not just for me, but for everyone she'd hurt. That was enough. But the real victory wasn't in her defeat. It was in how I'd learned to carry myself after. I didn't need to be perfect or untouchable. I just needed to be honest with myself, with the world. I've started painting small canvases in my living room, colors blending in messy and perfect strokes. It's not about making something beautiful. It's about making something true. The first one I finished, a blur of blues and greens, hangs above my couch. I look at it when I'm tired, when the day feels long, and it reminds me that I'm more than my scars, more than the battles I've fought. I'm a work in progress, and that's okay. At work, I've taken on a new role, training managers on workplace ethics. It's not glamorous, but it matters. I share what I've learned not as a victim, but as someone who's seen the cost of silence. The other day, a young analyst thanked me, her voice quiet, saying she'd spoken up about an unfair review because of my talk. I nodded, my throat tight, and realized this was why I kept going. Not for applause, but for moments like that when someone else finds their voice. Clara and I have been calling more, planning a trip to the coast next spring. We're not perfect, but we're trying, and that's enough. I've learned to forgive her, not because she earned it, but because I needed to. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to live without the weight. I've forgiven Sylvia too, in a way. Not for her, but for me, so I don't carry her shadow anymore. The biggest lesson I've taken from all this is simple, but it's everything. Life will break you sometimes because of others, sometimes because of yourself. But you don't have to stay broken. You can choose to rebuild, not to prove a point, but to live fully, scars and all. Every step I take now, every brushstroke, every morning run, is a choice to be free, not from pain, but within it. That's what makes us whole. I want to hear from you. What's a moment that broke you, and how did you find your way back? Share it below. Your story might help someone else. If this moved you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for listening, for being here. Keep going, keep growing, and I'll see you in the next one.